If you're in the Typebot Facebook group, you probably noticed a pretty cool post by Simone where he demos Typebot and Chatbase. If you have a few minutes, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. Not only is the demo really cool, but so is his music selection. Inspired by Simone's demo, I figured I'd give this a shot since I have Chatbase and try to put together my own version of this. So let's jump in. So first off, I'm going to head over to Typebot and create a new one from scratch. And one of the first things that Simone puts in his chatbot is to enter the website to crawl. So the Typebot, the way it functions is that you enter a website, then Chatbase has an API where you can crawl all the pages on the website. And then from there, you can use it to prompt your user to type in a question about the website. And Chatbase uses ChatGPT-3 in the background or ChatGPT-4, depending on your level of subscription or your account. And then it answers questions about your website. So it's pretty cool because you don't have to do any sort of setup. You just simply provide the domain or the website, and then Chatbase pretty much does all the work in the background, including, crawling all the web pages, and then answers any of your users' questions according to the information that it crawled. So next up, we'll drag in this website input, and we'll just give it a Typebot variable of website. Okay, here comes the fun part, which is using the Webhook block. So we're going to use this Webhook block to point over to the Chatbase API. So let's head over to Chatbase. Let's go to the API docs. And to the left, you'll see that there is a crawl API. So it's called Website Crawling API Guide. So we're going to use this endpoint here. Or if we're smart, we'll just click on this clipboard button. Then we'll head back to our Typebot and paste it in here. Okay, fair enough. So let's see what the next step is here. So it looks like we have to do a GET request. So let's hop back over and expand our API block, enable advanced configuration, and then we're going to switch it from POST to GET. Okay, so let's see what our next step is. Okay, it says to fetch the internal links from a website, make a GET request to the link up here. That's the endpoint, with a source URL query parameter. Chatbase will find all the internal links that have the source URL as a prefix. Okay, so it gives us a few examples about how it works with collecting those internal links. So let's check out the query parameter section down here. All right, so it has an HTTP example, which we'll be using here. And here is our first header that we're going to use. So it's going to be authorization and then bearer plus our secret key. So I'm going to go up to my header, type in authorization, and then I'll put in my secret key in just a second. But before I do that, I need to create a new chatbot. And it seems like I'll have to create just a blank one like so. Uh-oh, looks like I have to add a source. That's okay. I'll just go ahead and put test in here and then create chatbot. Okay, not enough content. All right, fine. I'll put some sort of website as a placeholder. And why not use this site? Let's fetch the links. I'm pretty sure there's only one page on that site, or 12. Now let's go ahead and create the chatbot, and success. So now let's go ahead and look for the secret key for this particular chatbot. All right, so it looks like we'll probably need this a little later. So I'm just going to copy the chatbot ID, and the API secret key isn't in here. So let's head back to my account and then go all the way back down, and bingo, here it is. So I'll go ahead and copy that, no peeking. And through the magic of post-production, I went ahead and added my secret key already. So let's head back to the API docs over here. Ooh, okay. It looks like we also need to pass in the query parameter as it's stated. That was a little oversight on my part. So let's go back. Let's copy this and go back to our Typebot. And oh, wow, here's another little mistake. Let's erase that get. And then let's paste in that source URL parameter. Now, I was actually expecting to pass in that source URL as a query parameter here, but I'm just going to stick with the documentation from the Chatbase docs, and I'm going to insert the source URL in here. So to kind of jump ahead a little bit, what I'm going to do is just pull in the website variable that we created. So this is going to be the user that types in their website, and then we're just going to pull that in here. So for testing purposes, what I'll do is select the website variable. And what was the name of that interesting website? Ah, yes, it was called Radical Red Rocket. So I'll go ahead and add that there. Okay, so that looks good. Let's head back to the API docs and then have a look at what the response is going to look like. Okay, so if we run a test, we should see something like this JSON response that we see down here. So let's head back to our Typebot and then let's test the request and see what we find. Let's scroll down a bit and there you go. We see that it worked. It brought back a status code of 200 and it fetched the links that we expected from the earlier test that we did over here. So if I head back to Chatbase, go to my chatbot, and this is it here. I should probably give it a name. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, can't do it in settings. So, okay, well, let's go to sources and have a look at the links that Chatbase crawled on its own when we first created this chatbot. So here we go. It kind of matches up, right? And if we go down here, we can see that it looks about right. Okay, that looks promising. So it turns out we don't need the chatbot ID after all, but I'll just keep that in my back pocket for now. And next, what I'll do is have a look at the rest of the docs, and that's pretty much it. There's error handling, but no other section. So it seems like it should work once we put this thing together. So let's give it a try. Let's connect the start block with this first one. Let's put this one up here to make it look nice and tidy. And next, we're going to have to display whatever answer Chatbase returns, right? So what we're going to need is a text bubble, and we need to save the response. So going back to the API block, if I do a test request, this gives me the ability to save whatever answer as a variable, but I'm noticing nothing really makes sense to save as an answer here. These are just the internal links for the website that I passed in. So I think we need to go back to the API docs and see if we need to incorporate another API block to fetch the answers from the content from the chatbot or Chatbase. So let's have a look at message a chatbot. Okay, so it looks like we're on the right track here. This says the message API guide suggests the chatbot interaction API allows you to interact with your chatbots using a post request. This API is available for users subscribed to a paid plan and provides a way to communicate with your chatbot programmatically. Okay, so that's something that we want to do. Let's go ahead and copy that and head back to Typebot. And let's go ahead and create another API block over here. Let's expand it and let's paste it. It'd be nice if it didn't paste the actual method here. And okay, so let's open up advanced configuration. It's set up to post. That looks great. So now let's go back to the message a chatbot docs, and we're going to need our handy authorization key along with our secret key, and then also this content type of application JSON. All right, cool. So let's head back over here and let's pass in application JSON, pass in the content type, authorization, and close your eyes while I put in the secret key here. All right, so we have our two headers in here. So let's go back to the docs. All right, and the request body seems like there's quite a few different parameters that we can use. So let's do the easy thing, and let's go ahead and copy this. And actually, before we jump in, let's go to this example request and do the HTTP method here. Okay, so everything looks good. Okay, this is what we copied, the JSON body. All right, let's go back to Typebot and paste in that example code or JSON. Oh, and look here. This is where we pass in the chatbot ID. So let's go ahead and do that. And then it looks like we need a conversation ID generated on your end. Interesting. Let's read a little bit more about that. Conversation ID. Okay, there's no indication of what that is in the docs. Maybe let's search for it. Okay, this result looks promising. Let's go ahead and have a look at that. Okay, so it looks like a sample response will look something like this. So here's a chatbot ID that looks fine. And probably somewhere in here is a conversation ID as well. Or not. I'm not seeing it in that URL. Anywho, if we look at this response, we can see it says each conversation object has the following structure. It has the ID of the conversation. So that's what we were trying to learn more about. And then it has a few other parameters that we have available. All right, let's have a look at this example response down here. Okay, that doesn't really tell me much. I don't know, I'm kind of thinking that I'll have to just automatically generate my own ID. So let's go back to where we were and then have a look at the conversation ID. Okay, here it is. And here it says the only purpose of this is to save the conversation to the chatbot dashboard. If not provided, the conversation will not be saved. This ID should be generated on your end. You should have different IDs for different conversations and make requests using the same ID for the same conversation. Make sure to send all the messages of the conversation with every request, since Chatbase will override the current saved messages for the conversation with the new messages received. Okay, so this seems like a nice to have. So I'm just going to go ahead and ignore this for now. And in fact, I'll just put in 1, 2, 3 as a placeholder. All right, so let's give this thing a whirl and see what it returns. All right, cool. So it works. It gives a status code of 200, but the answer is not very helpful, right? So it's probably because we need to pass in the actual user query, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to remove that placeholder and we are going to insert a new variable called assistant answer. And then here we're going to cut this and we're going to create a new variable called user answer. And then we're going to pass in the variables to test. So for assistant answer, we can say, how can I help you? And then for the user response or the user answer, we can ask a question like, what is Chatbase? And to make this example a little bit more aligned with my earlier example, I can just put in what is radical red rocket. And just for fun, let's go ahead and test this. I don't think it's going to make a difference, but let's see what it does. Oh, it actually works. Look at that. It says Radical Red Rocket is an agency that specializes in delivering measurable results for businesses. Okay, pretty cool. So that seems to be working as expected, or we're going in the right direction. So where I'm going to move this API block is right up here. And then we are going to post the assistant answer in here, followed by, did it not save? It didn't save. Okay, let's try that one more time. Assistant answer. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to follow it by asking the user, would you like to ask another question? And we'll give them two options of yes or no. And if it's yes, then we're going to point them back to this block here. And if it's no, we'll say something like, have a nice day. Something feels a little bit off because I'm not really seeing the user answer variable somewhere. So let's take a little closer look before we actually run through this chatbot sequence. So once the user inputs the website, Chatbase does the crawl with their API. It returns all the text from the internal links that it collects. And then we ask it a question, right? But we don't have a place to put the user answer variable or the user response. So let's go ahead and put that in here. And let's just say, ask a question about Radical Red Rocket. Then here, we'll save the variable as the user answer. Okay, this feels a little bit better because now here in this API block, if we expand it, this is where we pass in the user answer or the user question. So in this example down here with the test variables, it'll say, yeah, so this is pretty consistent. Okay. All right, this feels a little better. So let's verify and see how it actually works out. All right, so I'll punch in the funny sounding website. Seems like it worked very well. Okay, so let's ask a question about it. And then we'll say, what is Radical Red Rocket? So the post actually went through. However, it didn't return the response. It came out blank. So let's have another look at the API block and have a look at the body and then also the test request. We need to save this as an answer variable or some sort of variable. So here we are going to select data.text, and then we're going to save that as the assistant answer. Okay, so then that way, with the assistant answer, it gets populated in here after this API call. Okay, so let's give this another whirl. Let's put in the website name. Looks like it worked. Ask a question. What is Radical Red Rocket? Okay, there we go. It looks like it worked as expected. And then if we want to ask another question, let's say, sure, let's ask where it's located. It looks like it just repeated the previous answer. So we have to figure out where to point back the next step after a user selects yes or no. So let's have a look back at our chatbot sequence. And perhaps instead of putting it back here, let's point it up to this block so that it says, ask a question about Radical Red Rocket, and then it collects a new answer from the user. So let's give that a try. Let's re-enter the website. Say, what is Radical Red Rocket? Okay, that's working as expected. Let's click on yes. I would like to ask another question. Okay, this is better. Ask a question about Radical Red Rocket. And it seems like it's saving that input. So this might be something that we want to change in the settings, but we'll do that a little bit later. So now let's go ahead and say, where is this business located? Okay, so couldn't find that. So let's ask it another question. Let's ask it, what type of services does this business sell? All right, so this looks more in line to the question that I asked. So that's cool. And I'm also kind of interested why it wasn't able to figure it out where this business is located. How about if I ask it a little bit more specifically, just to kind of bounce around and see what this thing is capable of. Let's ask it, where is Radical Red Rocket located? All right, still doesn't know. So I have the website open. It says clearly in an H1 tag it's located, or it's in Seattle, Washington. So I'm kind of surprised it didn't catch it. I also think at the very bottom, it contains the actual address. So that's something to know, the accuracy of Chatbase. But again, software isn't perfect. It's always good to test around and see its limits. All right, well, I think that's enough to get you started. And I want to, again, give special thanks to Simone in the Typebot group. Really cool idea. Definitely think there's a lot of interesting use cases for this, and also a clever way to use this as lead gen. And as a quick bonus, I noticed in Chatbase, they've been developing the product a bit since I bought it. And it seems like they've added a couple of different things since then. So one of which is integrations. I love integrations. Okay, nothing really exciting here so far. I mean, you get connected to Zapier, but that's kind of meh. And I saw something else that caught my attention, which is here, leads. We all love leads, don't we? So here it seems like we could also kind of use this as lead gen to prompt a user before they kind of try this out for themselves to enter their name, their email, their phone number, and then that way we can start to engage with them. But I digress. In any case, if you have any questions, any comments, any future videos you'd like to see, please feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to get to them. All right, till the next video.